Now moving to chapter 2, section 1 in the book, and we're going to be working a lot with the identities in this unit. So let me kind of talk to you about some of the identities we already know, and we'll come back to this problem. But some things that you already know are that sine of an angle is the same thing as 1 over cosecant of that angle. So sine and cosecant are reciprocals. Cosine of an angle is 1 over secant of that angle. So cosine and secant are reciprocals. And tangent of an angle is the same thing as 1 over cotangent. We also know that tangent is sine over cosine. So that means that cotangent is cosine over sine. And you may want to write those down because you'll have to go back and look at them. Also, we know that sine is the y value, so cosecant would be 1 over the y value. So let's go back up to the problem now. What I want to do is evaluate all 6 trig functions. So I already know 2 of the functions, and I'm going to try to find the others. So I want to know what sine of x is, cosine, and tangent. And I also want to know what cosecant, secant, and cotangent are. So we are given, so those are the 6 trig functions. We already know secant, so I can fill that in. It's negative 3/2. And now we need to go find the others. Well, I know if secant is negative 3/2, cosine is the reciprocal, so it'd be negative 2/3. So now I have something to work with. I can draw a triangle where cosine is negative 2/3. Now, it says that we have a stipulation that that tangent has to be positive. So I want to find the places where tangent is positive. Here, sine is positive and cosine is positive. And here, cosine is negative and sine is negative. So when you take a positive divided by a positive, or a negative divided by a negative, you get a positive. So tangent is positive in the first quadrant and the third quadrant. But I know that the cosine is negative. So since cosine is negative in this quadrant, I know that I'm talking about a triangle that looks something like this. Or we could call that x, since that's what we made it in our problem. So now I know that cosine is negative 2/3, so the adjacent is negative 2, and the hypotenuse is 3. So I'm going to have to use Pythagorean theorem to find this side. So negative 2 squared plus x squared equals 3 squared. So 4 plus x squared equals 9. So x squared equals 5. So x equals the square root of 5. And if I think about my triangle, since this was the x value, it's got to be negative square root of 5 because sine is negative in this quadrant. So go ahead and fill out sine then. Sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. So negative square root 5 over 3. So that means this cosecant would be the reciprocal. I'm going to write it up here because I'm going to have to work with it. 3 over negative square root 5. So I have to take the top and the bottom by the square root 5 over the square root 5. So I would get negative 3 square root 5 over 5. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So the opposite over the adjacent. So negative square root 5 over negative 2 become positive square root 5 over 2. The cotangent is going to be the reciprocal. So I'm going to write it up here and work with it here. So it'd be 2 over square root 5. Take top and bottom by the square root 5. So it would be 2 square root 5 over 5. So we found all 6 trig functions. I'm going to do another example of this with you. But the way I'll do it in the homework is I'll give you this, and then I'll have multiple choice for these 4 things.